The familiar chime of my phone cut through the silence of my empty house. I wasn't expecting any messages, especially not at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I had just finished grading a stack of third-grade spelling tests and was about to head to bed when the notification appeared. It was from my friend Sam, with a message that would shatter my world. "Jen, I don't know how to tell you this, but you need to see something." Attached was a screenshot from Instagram that made my stomach drop. There was my husband, Mark, his arm wrapped around a woman I'd never seen before, standing on a pristine beach with crystal-clear water stretching behind them. The caption read, "Day 4 in paradise with my amazing man. Couples together, stay together, Cabo love." The location tag wasn't Seattle, where Mark was supposedly attending a marketing conference. It was El Dorado Resort, Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The mug of chamomile tea I'd been holding slipped from my fingers, crashing onto our hardwood floor and shattering, a perfect mirror to what was happening to my heart. The woman in the photo was young, stunning, and very much not on a professional relationship with my husband of 7 years. My hands trembled as I clicked on her profile. Olivia Reynolds, 28, event planner. Her entire feed was a documentary of their luxury vacation, sunset yacht cruises, champagne breakfasts, couples massages, all while I was teaching elementary school, making do with leftovers, and believing Mark when he said we needed to cut back on expenses to save for our future. If you're joining us today from somewhere around the world, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if this story resonates with you in any way, make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow I'll be sharing the incredible aftermath of what happened next, including a surprising twist that changed everything about how this story ends. Mark and I met 8 years ago at a friend's barbecue in Portland. He was charming, ambitious, and seemed genuinely interested in my passion for teaching. After a whirlwind year of dating, we got married in a small ceremony and bought our craftsman-style home with the inheritance my grandmother had left me. Mark had recently been promoted to marketing executive at TechVision, and I was in my 3rd year teaching at Dogwood Elementary. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable, and we had plans. Big plans. For the past 2 years, we'd been saving for a vacation property in the Cascade Mountains, somewhere peaceful where we could eventually retire. At least that's what I thought we were saving for. I had made countless sacrifices for our shared dream. I brought homemade lunches to work every day, tutored struggling students on weekends for extra income, and hadn't bought new clothes in over a year. Meanwhile, 6 months ago, Mark had insisted on purchasing a silver BMW 5 Series that we definitely couldn't afford. "It's a necessary business expense," he'd claimed. "Clients expect a certain image." To ease my concerns, he'd added my name to the title. "For tax purposes," he'd said. I reluctantly agreed, trusting his business judgment over my own financial instincts. Now, staring at the evidence of his betrayal, those business justifications suddenly made perfect sense in an entirely different and heartbreaking way. I scrolled back to the beginning of Olivia's Instagram feed, my heart pounding harder with each swipe. Their relationship wasn't new. Subtle hints appeared in posts from months ago. A man's hand holding a cocktail, a reflection in a restaurant window, comments with suspicious inside jokes. I had been blind to it all, too trusting, too consumed with our future plans to notice. The signs. The timeline became clear. Mark's increasing business dinners, his overnight conferences, his sudden interest in his appearance, new clothes, expensive cologne, a fancy gym membership. Every puzzle piece fell into place with nauseating clarity. With shaking hands, I opened our banking app. Another blow awaited. Our joint savings account, which should have contained over $42,000, now showed just under $9,000. Large withdrawals had been made over the past month, the most recent for $5,000 just 4 days ago, right before his Seattle conference began. Next, I found confirmation emails for flights to Cabo, the luxury resort booking, and even a private yacht rental. all purchased with our joint funds. The total for this extravagant getaway? Nearly $12,000, almost 3 months of my teaching. Salary. My investigation continued as dawn broke over Portland. I discovered a credit card statement I'd never seen before, hidden in Mark's cloud storage. The balance was over $15,000, charges for luxury restaurants, hotel rooms within our own city, and jewelry stores. The final betrayal was an email thread with a real estate agent about apartments in the trendy Pearl District, clearly planning his exit strategy while systematically draining our resources. This wasn't just an affair. It was calculated financial betrayal and theft of our shared dreams. As I scrolled through Olivia's Instagram again, the contrast between my reality and their fantasy became painfully clear. While I'd been teaching 30 energetic third graders and grading papers until midnight, they were parasailing over crystal blue waters. While I clipped coupons and bought generic brands, Mark was ordering $200 bottles of champagne and booking private cabanas. One post particularly twisted the knife. When he says money is no object, blessed what he else upgrade your life. The photo showed Olivia wearing a diamond bracelet on the balcony of their ocean view suite, a bracelet that cost more than our monthly mortgage payment, I was sure. Olivia had meticulously documented every luxurious moment. Exclusive restaurants, where entrees cost more than my daily salary, shopping trips to designer boutiques with bags prominently displayed, spa treatments at the 5-star resort. She'd even created a highlight reel labeled Cabo with Bay, a permanent digital record of their betrayal. The comments section was even more devastating. You two are relationship goals. And he's definitely an upgrade from your last boyfriend. Olivia had responded to one comment with, "When you find a man who knows how to treat you right, you never let him go. Sorry not sorry to whoever had him before?" The casual cruelty of it stole my breath. Did she know about me? Did she know he was married? Did she care? I sat at our kitchen table surrounded by financial statements and screenshots until the sun rose fully. Then something inside me shifted. The hurt and shock gave way to a cold clarity I'd never experienced before. 7 years of marriage. Ending. Not with a conversation, but with an Instagram post. 7 years of trust, shattered by secret credit cards and hidden withdrawals. 7 years of building a life together, reduced to a hashtag. Upgrade your life. I was done being the supporting character in Mark's story. It was time to write my own. Two can play at this game, I whispered to our empty house. I opened my laptop and made a list. According to Olivia's posts, they were scheduled to be in Cabo for 7 more days. That gave me exactly 1 week to execute the plan forming in my mind. The trusting, accommodating teacher who always gave others the benefit of the doubt was gone. In her place stood a woman who would no longer be taken advantage of. A woman ready to take back control. My first call was to Sam, my best friend and a successful real estate agent. I needed someone who understood property values and legal implications. "That absolute bastard," she said after I explained everything. "I'm coming over right now. We need to figure out what you can legally do." Sam arrived within 30 minutes, armed with coffee and a determination that matched my own. She examined the financial documents I'd gathered, her expression darkening with each page. "This is textbook financial infidelity," she said, highlighting several large withdrawals. "And he's not even being careful about it. Look at these charges. They match exactly with the dates of those Instagram posts." We spread everything across my dining room table: bank statements, credit card bills, property records, and printed screenshots of Olivia's Instagram. Sam took notes rapidly, occasionally pausing to make a phone call or send a text. "You know," she said during one such pause, "I never completely trusted him. There was always something too polished, too performative about the way he talked about your relationship." "Why didn't you say anything?" I asked, not accusingly, just curious. Would you have believed me? She countered gently. You were head over heels, and he was convincing. Plus, it's not like I had evidence, just a feeling. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. But that doesn't matter now. What matters is protecting you and your assets, and I have just the person to help us do that. My next call was to my brother Alex, who owned a mechanic shop specializing in European cars. The BMW is in both your names? He confirmed after I'd explained the situation. Then legally, you can sell it without his signature. Bring it over this afternoon and we'll get it detailed and ready for sale. That car's worth at least 40 grand, Jen. No way should he get to keep it after what he's done. Alex had never approved of Mark. He thought Mark talked down to me, subtly undermining my confidence while presenting himself as supportive. I'd dismissed Alex's concerns as overprotective brother syndrome. Now, I wished I'd paid more attention. How many red flags had I missed? How many warnings had I ignored? I'll be there in an hour, I promised, gathering the car's documentation. And Alex? Thank you. That's what family's for, he replied simply. Unlike some people, preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I actually meant my vows to stick by you. I spent the rest of the morning gathering everything I would need. Vehicle title, marriage certificate, house deed, financial records, all went into a folder. I changed the passwords on my personal, email and bank accounts, created new ones where necessary, and began transferring copies of important digital documents to a secure cloud storage account only I could access. By early afternoon, I was at Alex's garage, watching as his team detailed the BMW to showroom condition. We'll list it tonight on multiple platforms, Alex assured me. I know a few people looking for exactly this model. It'll sell fast. He paused, giving me a searching look. You sure about this, Jen? It's a big step. I'm sure, I replied, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. He used our savings to take his girlfriend to Cabo while I've been eating ramen to save money. The car is the least of what he owes me. Alex nodded, satisfied with my resolve. I've got a friend who's a locksmith, he mentioned casually, in case you're interested in making sure your house stays secure while you decide your next steps. I hadn't even thought about the locks. Mark had a key, of course. He could walk in any time once he returned. The idea of changing the locks felt both terrifying and empowering, a concrete action that said this house is no longer your home. Yes, I decided. Give me his number. Finally, I called Rebecca Torres, a family law attorney Sam had recommended. She's a shark, Sam had said, but she's your shark. Rebecca agreed to see me that afternoon, rearranging her schedule when she heard the urgency in my voice. Rebecca's office was in a renovated Victorian in downtown Portland, all polished, wood and stained glass windows. The woman herself matched her surroundings, elegant, precise, and radiating a quiet authority. She listened without interruption as I explained my situation, occasionally making notes on a yellow legal pad. Only when I finished did she speak. Document everything, she advised, her voice calm but intense. Every withdrawal, every Instagram post, every text message. In Oregon, you have some advantages since your name is on the car title, and the house was purchased with your inheritance before the marriage. But we need to move carefully and strategically. Rebecca outlined what I could legally do. Sell the car since my name was on the title, secure my personal property, change the locks on the house since it was purchased with my inheritance, and take up to half of our joint accounts. She also explained what I couldn't do. Empty joint accounts completely, dispose of Mark's personal property, or make false allegations. The goal here is to protect yourself, not punish him, she explained. The law will handle the punishment. Part if we present our case properly. She handed me her card. I want daily updates on what you're doing. No surprises. We're going to do this by the book. A book that's going to leave your husband with nothing to challenge legally. I left Rebecca's office with a clear plan and a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. As I drove home, I realized something surprising. Beneath the hurt and anger, I felt relief. The constant anxiety of trying to please Mark, of adjusting my needs to accommodate his wants, of ignoring the subtle signs that something wasn't right. All of that was gone. In its place was a steely determination to reclaim my life. That evening, I began photographing everything in our house, creating a detailed inventory with dates of purchase and approximate values. Sam came over to help, bringing takeout and moral support. "Think of it as an insurance policy," she said as we cataloged items. "If anything mysteriously disappears, we have proof it existed." The next day, I visited 3 storage unit facilities before finding the right one. Clean, secure, and with 24-hour access. I paid for 3 months up front with my personal savings. The unit was spacious, climate-controlled, and would easily fit all of Mark's possessions. Standing in the empty space, I had a moment of doubt. Was I really going to pack up everything my husband owned and leave it here? Then I remembered Olivia's Instagram caption from that morning. "Shopping day with my love," when he says, "Get whatever you want." Spoiled deserved it. All doubt vanished. I began packing that afternoon. Each shirt I folded, each pair of shoes I boxed, each framed photo I wrapped came with memories, most now tainted by the knowledge of his double life. I discovered items I'd never seen before. Designer clothes with tags still attached, an expensive watch he'd never worn at home, cologne that had never touched his skin when he was with me. Each discovery was another small betrayal, further confirmation that I was doing the right thing. My neighbor, Mrs. Wilson, noticed me carrying boxes to my car and offered to help. At 67, she was remarkably spry and surprisingly strong. "Need any help, dear?" she called from her porch. "I've got good eyes for detail and plenty of time." I hesitated, not wanting to air my dirty laundry to the neighborhood, but Mrs. Wilson had been a fixture on our street for decades. If anyone had noticed Mark's comings and goings, it would be her. "Actually," I said, "I could use some help." As we carefully packed Mark's collection of business books and sports memorabilia, Mrs. Wilson shared her observations. "I never liked the way he looked at other women when you weren't watching," she confessed. "And those late nights? Cars I didn't recognize dropping him off sometimes? I may be old, but I'm not blind." Her candor surprised me. "Why didn't you say anything?" Mrs. Wilson sighed, wrapping a trophy in bubble wrap. "It wasn't my place. And honestly, dear, would you have believed me? We see what we want to see in those we love." She patted my hand. "But you're seeing clearly now, and that's what matters." For the next 3 days, Mrs. Wilson helped me pack while sharing neighborhood gossip to keep my spirits up. She brought over homemade cookies and casseroles, insisting I needed to keep my strength up. "Revenge requires proper nutrition," she declared, making me laugh for the first time in days. We worked methodically through the house. Mark's clothes, toiletries, electronics, and personal items were carefully packed and labeled. I was thorough, but not vindictive. His expensive suits were hung properly in garment bags. His collections were boxed with appropriate padding. I even made an inventory list for each box, noting the contents in detail. There was one collection I couldn't bring myself to send to storage: Mark's vinyl records. He'd been collecting them since college, hunting down rare pressings and first editions with the same enthusiasm others might bring to fine art. Despite everything, I couldn't risk those records being damaged by temperature fluctuations in a storage unit. Instead, I carefully packed them and asked Alex to keep them at his house. "You're being nicer than he deserves," Alex commented when I dropped off the records. "It's not about being nice," I explained. "It's about being better. I want to walk away from this knowing I didn't stoop to his level. Alex nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Mom would be proud of you," he said simply, referring to our mother who had passed away 5 years earlier. It was the highest compliment he could give, and it meant everything. By day 5, 2 potential BMW buyers had contacted Alex. The first was clearly looking to haggle and waste our time. The second, a neurosurgeon from Washington named Dr. James Stevens, had driven down specifically for this model. He examined the car thoroughly, asking intelligent questions about its maintenance. "History and features? I'll take it," he said finally. "Your asking price is fair for the condition. I can transfer the funds tomorrow if that works for you." I signed the preliminary paperwork, feeling a strange mixture of satisfaction and sadness. The car had been a symbol of Mark's deception, but it was also one of our last significant shared assets. Watching Dr. Stevens drive away in his own car after concluding our deal, I realized I was one step closer to freedom. That evening, a locksmith recommended by Alex arrived to change all the locks. He was efficient and discreet, asking no questions about why a woman alone would need new locks in a hurry. Within an hour, he handed me a set of new keys. "The old ones won't work anymore," he confirmed. "No one's getting in without these or breaking a window." I slept soundly that night for the first time since discovering Mark's betrayal. The house felt different somehow, more securely mine. The next morning, I continued with my plan. Alex and 2 of his employees arrived with a truck to transport Mark's boxed belongings to the storage unit. We worked quickly and efficiently, the men carrying the heavier items while I directed and organized. By sunset, every trace of Mark had been removed from the house except for a few photographs I couldn't bear to take down yet. The closets that had been stuffed with his designer clothes now stood half empty. The garage no longer housed his expensive golf clubs and cycling equipment. His home office was cleared of everything except the furniture, which had come with the house. I stood in the empty office, mentally redesigning it. Perhaps an art studio? I'd always wanted to get back into painting, something Mark had subtly discouraged as impractical and messy. Or maybe a reading nook with the comfortable chair I'd always wanted but Mark had vetoed as not fitting his aesthetic. The possibilities were suddenly endless. That night, I transferred exactly half of our remaining joint savings to my personal account. I could have taken more. Rebecca had confirmed that given the circumstances and Mark's prior withdrawals, a judge would likely find it reasonable. But I wanted to be scrupulously fair. This wasn't about money. It was about respect and consequences. The next morning, Dr. Stevens returned with cashier's check for the BMW. We completed the paperwork, and I watched as he drove away in what had been Mark's pride and joy. The money, $41,000, would be deposited in my personal account, a financial cushion that would help me rebuild my life. With the car sold and Mark's belongings in storage, I had one final task: writing a letter to leave with the storage unit key. I sat at our kitchen table, my kitchen table now, and tried to find the right words. Too emotional would give him satisfaction. Too cold might provoke more anger. I wanted to be clear, factual, and firm. After several drafts, I settled on a simple, straightforward approach. By the time you read this, you'll notice some changes. Your belongings are in Storage Unit 247 at Secure Space Storage on Madison Avenue. Paid for 3 months. The key and receipt are attached. The BMW has been sold. As co-owner, I had every legal right to sell our joint property, just as you had. The right to spend our joint savings on your vacation with Olivia in Cabo. I've taken exactly half of what remained in our joint account, far less than what you spent these past months. The house remains in my name, as it was purchased with my inheritance before our marriage. Your vinyl collection is safe with Alex. Unlike you, I don't destroy what others value. I hope the memories you made in Cabo were worth it. Please contact me only through Rebecca Torres, whose card is attached. Jennifer. I sealed the letter in an envelope and placed it on the kitchen counter with the storage unit key and receipt. Then I took one last look around the house, our house, now just my house, and felt a surprising sense of peace. I had done what needed to be done. The rest was up to Mark. Just as I was preparing to leave and stay with Sam until the initial confrontation was over, my phone pinged with an Instagram notification. Olivia had posted another beach photo with Mark. Last sunset in paradise. For now. Can't wait to come back soon. Forever. New chapter. The hashtag sent a chill down my spine. How long had they been planning their future together? Had any of our marriage been real? Minutes later, a text from Mark arrived. Conference going great. They've asked me to stay for 2 more sessions, so I'll be back Tuesday instead of Sunday. Miss you. The audacity of the lie fueled my resolve. He wasn't just betraying me, he was insulting my intelligence with every fabricated detail. I turned off my phone, packed a bag with essentials, and drove to Sam's apartment, where I would stay until the initial storm passed. For the first time in days, I slept soundly, no longer carrying the weight of uncertainty and deception. The next morning, over coffee, Sam asked the question everyone would eventually ask. Do you think Mark will try to fight this legally? I considered the question carefully. He might try, I said finally. His ego won't let him accept defeat easily. But Rebecca seems confident that we've done everything by the book. The house was bought with my inheritance before we married. The car was in both our names, so I had every right to sell it. I took exactly half of our remaining joint funds, which is more than fair considering how much he spent on their vacation. And I've secured his property, not destroyed it. Sam nodded, satisfied with my reasoning. Plus, she added with a hint of mischief, all that evidence of him spending your money on his girlfriend won't look great in front of a judge. We spent the day doing normal, mundane things, grocery shopping, watching movies, walking in the park. It felt strange to be engaged in such ordinary activities while waiting for my life to explode. But there was also something therapeutic about it, a reminder that life would go on regardless of Mark's reaction. The storm broke the next day. Mark returned from Cabo a day earlier than his extended timeline, perhaps sensing something was wrong or just eager to return to his double life. My phone exploded with notifications. What the hell have you done? Where is my car? You can't do this. Answer your phone. This is illegal. I'm calling the police. I showed the messages to Sam without responding to any of them. Right on schedule, she commented. Let him rant. Every threatening message is just more evidence for Rebecca. An hour later, Mark was at Sam's door, having obviously gotten her address from a mutual friend. Sam called the building security before he could make it up to her apartment. They escorted him out of the building, his protests echoing through the lobby. You can't hide forever, he shouted as security led him away. This isn't over. But it was over. That evening, Rebecca called to inform me that Mark had contacted her office, threatening legal action. He's blustering, she said calmly. Once I explained the legal reality of his situation, he deflated pretty quickly. I've agreed to meet with him and his attorney tomorrow to discuss terms. Already? He found an attorney that fast? I was surprised at the speed. Not a good one, Rebecca replied, and I could hear the smile in her voice. Or rather, not one appropriate for this type of case. He's brought in a corporate lawyer from his firm, someone completely out of their depth in family law. This should be interesting. The meeting between the attorneys took place the next day. I wasn't present, but Rebecca called immediately afterward. Well, that was enlightening, she began. Your husband's attorney was woefully unprepared. Once I presented our documentation, the Instagram posts, the bank withdrawals, the hidden credit card, they quickly changed their tone. What are they offering? I asked, holding my breath. "Mark wants the house," Rebecca said bluntly. "I told him absolutely not, given it was purchased with your inheritance. He's also demanding the return of the BMW, which is obviously impossible, now that it's been sold. In the end, they've agreed to a quick, uncontested divorce with you, keeping the house and him taking a small cash settlement from the car sale to rebuild his life, as he put it." "How small?" I questioned, already knowing I would agree to almost anything to be free of Mark quickly. "10,000, Rebecca replied, "which, given how much of your joint savings he spent on Olivia, is more than generous. I recommend we accept and move forward. The sooner this is over, the sooner you can truly begin again." I agreed without hesitation. 10,000 was a small price to pay for freedom. The following weeks passed in a blur of paperwork, meetings, and legal proceedings. Mark attempted to contact me several times, oscillating between anger and plaintive appeals to our history together. I maintained my silence, directing all communication through Rebecca as planned. Meanwhile, Olivia's Instagram told its own story. Gone were the happy couple photos, replaced by vague quotes about betrayal and true colors. One particularly telling post read, "When someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time." Another, posted about a week after their return, simply said, "Some men are boys with expensive toys. Know the difference." According to Sam, who maintained connections with mutual friends, Mark was staying in a budget hotel while frantically trying to secure an apartment. The fancy Pearl District units he'd been looking at were suddenly out of reach. His credit card was maxed out, and without the BMW, his carefully constructed image was crumbling. He'd even had to borrow money from a coworker to pay for an Uber to work. 2 weeks after Mark's return, Olivia was spotted with a new man, one of Mark's former colleagues. By then, word had spread about Mark's double life. His professional reputation took a hit, not because of the affair itself, but because many of his clients and coworkers had been unwittingly drawn into his lies. The business dinners that were actually dates with Olivia, the client meetings that were shopping trips for her, all created a pattern of dishonesty that made people question his integrity in all areas. As for me, I slowly began reclaiming my space and my identity. With Sam's help, I redecorated the house, replacing Mark's dark, masculine furniture with pieces that reflected my taste, lighter, more colorful, more comfortable. I converted his home office into an art studio, setting up an easel by the window and filling shelves with art supplies. For the first time in years, I began painting again, finding healing in the stroke of a brush across canvas. I kept Mark's vinyl records safe at Alex's house until the divorce was finalized, then had them delivered to Mark's new apartment with a neutral note. "As promised, your collection is intact. Take care." It was my final communication with him, a small act of decency in the midst of a painful separation. The divorce was finalized 3 months after Mark returned from Cabo, with the court largely siding with me given the documented financial infidelity and clear evidence of Mark's deception. I kept my maiden name, which I had never changed professionally, and officially changed it back in my personal life as well. The money from selling the BMW became the seed funding for something I'd always dreamed of, but Mark had discouraged. A small educational consulting business I now run during summers and weekends, helping struggling students with learning differences. It's something I'm passionate about, having seen so many bright children fall through the cracks in our educational system. I started small, working with just 5 students that first summer after the divorce. Word spread quickly among the parents at Dogwood Elementary, and soon I had more requests than I could handle alone. I named the business Spark Learning because that's what I wanted to create in each child, that spark of understanding and confidence that changes everything. I converted part of my art studio into a cozy learning space with comfortable floor pillows, colorful educational materials, and walls decorated with inspirational quotes and student artwork. It wasn't just a business. It was a mission to help children who learned differently, just as I had always wanted to do. Each small success felt like a personal victory. When 10-year-old Ethan, who had been failing math for 2 years, suddenly grasped multiplication concepts through the hands-on methods I developed, his mother cried during our feedback session. "No one's ever taken the time to figure out how he learns," she told me. I thought about all the times Mark had called my teaching career just a job, rather than the calling it truly was, and I felt a deep satisfaction in proving him wrong. I kept the house, making it truly mine by redesigning every room. The living room that once featured Mark's chosen dark leather furniture now had bright, comfortable pieces that reflected my own taste. Plants filled corners that were once occupied by his sports equipment. The kitchen, which Mark had insisted on renovating with cold, modern finishes, now had colorful accents and personal touches. The space felt lighter, more peaceful, as do I. My brother Alex became a regular visitor, dropping by for Sunday dinners and helping with home repairs. "You seem happier," he observed one evening as we sat on the back patio, watching fireflies appear in the summer twilight. "Even during the good times with Mark, you never seemed this at ease." "I am happier," I realized, surprised by the truth of it. I don't have to shrink myself anymore to make room for someone else's ego. I don't have to justify my choices or defend my dreams. I thought about how much energy I had spent trying to accommodate Mark's preferences, his moods, his vision of our life together. All that energy was now channeled into my own growth, my own happiness. Mrs. Wilson, my 67-year-old neighbor who helped me pack Mark's things, became a dear friend. She stops by every Sunday for tea now, bringing homemade scones and neighborhood gossip. "You're blooming," she told me recently. "Like my garden after I finally cut down that overgrown oak that was blocking all the sunlight." Her metaphor made me smile. It was accurate. Without Mark's shadow, I was finally growing into the person I was meant to be. Sometimes people ask if I regret my actions. I don't. While Mark was living in a fantasy world with Olivia, I was reclaiming my reality. It wasn't about revenge. It was about refusing to be a victim in my own life. It was about setting boundaries and showing that actions have consequences. The lesson I learned wasn't about betrayal or even love. It was about self-worth and resilience. I discovered I was capable of making difficult decisions and creating a life that reflected my own values and priorities. Mark's choices led to consequences he never anticipated. My choices led to a freedom I never imagined possible. Last week, I ran into Mark at a coffee shop downtown. He looked older somehow, diminished. We acknowledged each other with a nod but didn't speak. As I waited for my order, I overheard him talking with a friend. "The apartment's small, but it's all I can afford right now," he was saying. "The consultant position doesn't pay what I was making before." I felt no satisfaction in his downfall, only a profound sense of how unnecessary it all was. He could have simply told me he wanted to end our marriage. We could have parted ways honestly, without the deception and financial betrayal. Instead, he chose a path that ultimately cost him everything: his reputation, his career trajectory, his financial stability, and yes, his BMW. As for Olivia, her Instagram is now filled with travel photos of just herself. No companion visible in the frame. The diamond bracelet is notably absent from her wrist in recent pictures. Her captions are less boastful, more introspective. Perhaps she too learned something from this experience. The BMW now belongs to Dr. Stevens, the neurosurgeon from Washington. He sent me a thank you note after the purchase, saying it was the smoothest car transaction he'd ever experienced. I used some of the money to buy myself a practical, fuel-efficient car that suits my needs perfectly. The rest funded my consulting business and a much-needed vacation. Not to Cabo, but to a peaceful writing retreat in the mountains where I finally finished the children's book I'd been working on for years. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I received an unexpected email from Mark. The subject line read simply, "Thank you." Curious and cautious, I opened it. "Jennifer," it began. "I've written this email 100 times in my head, and it never comes out right. But I need to say it anyway. Thank you for taking care of my records. I didn't deserve that kindness after what I did. I want you to know that I'm seeing a therapist now, trying to understand why I sabotaged the best thing in my life. This isn't an attempt to get you back. I know that ship has sailed, and rightly so. It's just an acknowledgement that in the midst of all the hurt I caused, you still showed character. You were always the better person in our relationship. I see that clearly now." I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. But I appreciated his recognition, late as it was, that I had acted with integrity even when he had not. It provided a certain closure I hadn't realized I needed. The following week brought another surprise. Rebecca called to let me know that Mark had voluntarily offered an additional financial settlement. He says it's to make up for the savings he spent on the Cabo trip and other expenses related to his extracurricular activities, she explained. It's actually quite generous. He's liquidated some investments to make it happen. Why would he do that? I wondered aloud. The divorce is final. He's not legally obligated to pay anything more. People surprise you sometimes, Rebecca replied. Maybe this is his way of making amends. Or maybe his therapist suggested it. Either way, it's legitimate. I've reviewed the paperwork. I accepted the settlement, not out of forgiveness, but because it was rightfully mine. I used the money to expand Spark Learning, hiring 2 part-time teachers, and increasing our capacity to help more children. What had begun as Mark's attempt at restitution became an investment in something meaningful and positive. That summer, Spark Learning hosted its first academic camp for kids with learning differences. 20 children attended, each one blossoming under individualized attention and teaching methods tailored to their unique learning styles. On the last day, we held a showcase for parents, with each child presenting a project they had completed. Watching these students, many of whom had been labeled problem learners in traditional classrooms, proudly displaying their work was one of the most fulfilling moments of my career. One mother pulled me aside, tears in her eyes. My daughter hated school before this, she confided. She would cry every morning, saying she was stupid, that her brain didn't work right. Now she can't wait to learn. You've given her back her confidence. I thought about how close I had come to abandoning this dream for Mark's vision of our life together, and I felt an overwhelming gratitude for the painful awakening that had set me free. As the business grew, so did my confidence. I began speaking at educational conferences, sharing my methods and advocating for more inclusive approaches to teaching. At one such conference in Seattle, I met Dr. Michael Collins, a neuropsychologist specializing in learning differences. We connected over shared philosophies about education and brain development, and he invited me to collaborate on a research project examining alternative teaching methods for children with processing disorders. Our professional relationship gradually evolved into friendship, and then, slowly, into something more. Unlike my whirlwind romance with Mark, this relationship developed thoughtfully, cautiously. Michael understood my hesitation, my careful boundaries. He respected my independence and supported my work without trying to direct it or diminish it. On our 6th date, as we walked along the Portland waterfront after dinner, Michael asked about my divorce. I had mentioned it briefly but never shared the full story. That night, I told him everything: the discovery, the betrayal, my week of methodical reclamation. When I finished, we stood watching the lights reflect on the water. "You're remarkable," he said finally. "Not just for how you handled it, but for what you built afterward. Most people would have been consumed by bitterness or fear. You channeled it into something meaningful. I had good support, I acknowledged, thinking of Sam, Alex, Mrs. Wilson, and all the others who had helped me through that difficult time. And I discovered I was stronger than I knew. Michael nodded. That's what adversity does when we let it. It reveals our true strength. He hesitated, then added carefully, "Thank you for trusting me with your story. I know it can't be easy to trust again after something like that." "It isn't," I admitted, "but I'm learning." Our relationship progressed naturally, without pressure or grand declarations. Michael became a regular presence at Spark Learning events, offering his expertise and genuine enthusiasm for the work. The children adored him, especially when he brought his therapy dog, Cooper, to visit. We collaborated professionally and supported each other personally, but maintained our independent lives and careers. A year into our relationship, we were having dinner at my house when Michael noticed the children's book manuscript on my desk. "You wrote this?" he asked, flipping through the colorfully illustrated pages. "During that mountain retreat right after my divorce," I explained. "It's about a little girl who discovers she has special powers to see the unique talents in others that they can't see themselves." "Have you tried to publish it?" He seemed genuinely interested, reading snippets and studying the illustrations. I shook my head. "I finished it, but then Spark Learning took off and I got busy. It's just been sitting there." Michael looked up, his expression serious. "Jen, this is wonderful. The story, the illustrations, kids would love this. And the message is so aligned with your work. You should definitely publish it." "I wouldn't even know where to begin," I demurred. "I might," he replied. "My sister is an editor at North Star Children's Books. Would you let me show it to her? No pressure, but I think she'd be interested." 2 months later, I signed a contract for The Talent Spotter, my first children's book. The editor loved the story's message about recognizing and valuing different kinds of intelligence and abilities. The book would be published the following spring, with a planned series to follow if sales were strong. When I received the first printed copy, I sat on my porch swing and cried. Not from sadness, but from a profound sense of accomplishment and gratitude. This book, like Spark Learning, might never have existed if Mark hadn't betrayed me. His deception had inadvertently freed me to pursue dreams I had compromised away during our marriage. I thought about texting Mark a photo of the book, a petty impulse I quickly dismissed. My success wasn't about him. It never had been. It was about finally believing in myself enough to create the life I wanted, not the one someone else prescribed for me. The book launch coincided with the 2nd anniversary of my discovery of Mark's affair. The timing wasn't lost on me as I stood in a local bookstore, reading my story to a circle of enchanted children and their parents. 2 years ago, I had been shattered by betrayal, sitting among the ruins of my marriage. Today, I was celebrating a new creation, surrounded by friends, students, and colleagues who genuinely valued me. Sam was there, taking photos and managing the refreshment table with her characteristic efficiency. Alex had brought his new girlfriend, both of them beaming with pride. Mrs. Wilson sat in the front row, nodding encouragingly each time I looked up from the pages. Michael stood quietly at the back, Cooper the therapy dog at his feet, giving me space to shine while making sure I knew he was there. After the reading, during the signing portion, a familiar face appeared before me. It was Olivia Reynolds, looking very different from her Instagram photos. More subdued, less polished. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Couldn't reconcile this woman with the glamorous other woman who had featured so prominently in my personal nightmare. "Your book is beautiful," she said quietly, placing a copy on the table. "Would you sign it for my niece? Her name is Emma." I nodded mutely, opening the book and picking up my pen. As I signed, Olivia spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know he was married, not at first. By the time I found out I was. She trailed off, then straightened her shoulders. That's no excuse. I should have ended it immediately. I just wanted you to know that. I looked up, meeting her eyes for the first time. There was no defiance there, no challenge, only regret, and something that looked like respect. Thank you for telling me, I said, finding my voice. I hope your niece enjoys the book. She nodded, taking the signed copy. She will, and congratulations, on everything. She gestured vaguely around the bookstore, perhaps referring to the event, perhaps to my evident success and happiness. Before I could respond, she had disappeared into the crowd. Sam appeared at my elbow. Was that who I think it was? Yes, I confirmed, still processing the encounter. What did she want? Sam's protective instincts were on full alert. To apologize, I think, and to buy a book for her niece. I smiled at the irony. Life is strange sometimes. That it is, Sam agreed, eyeing the door through which Olivia had vanished. You okay? I considered the question carefully. Was I okay after coming face to face with the woman who had been, however unknowingly at first, part of the betrayal that had upended my life? Surprisingly, I felt no anger, no resentment, not even discomfort, just a calm acknowledgement that we were all moving forward, learning and growing from our mistakes and choices. I'm more than okay, I told Sam truthfully. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. The next morning, I found an unexpected package on my doorstep. Inside was a beautiful handcrafted journal with a note, for your next story. The world needs your voice. O.R. I ran my fingers over the journal's leather cover, appreciating the gesture while recognizing I had no obligation to use it. I could set it aside, donate it, even throw it away if it carried too many negative associations. But after a moment's reflection, I placed it on my desk in the studio. Not because I had forgiven Olivia, forgiveness wasn't something I owed her, but because I refused to let past pain dictate my present choices. The journal was lovely and would serve my purposes well. That was enough. As spring turned to summer, Spark Learning continued to thrive. We added a new program for middle school students transitioning to high school, addressing the often overlooked challenges of that critical educational period. Michael consulted on the curriculum, bringing his neuropsychological expertise to bear on our teaching methods. Our collaboration deepened both our professional and personal connections. One warm evening in July, Michael and I were grilling dinner in my backyard when he broached a subject we had danced around for months. I've been thinking, he began casually, flipping a veggie burger with studied concentration. My lease is up in September, and I'm here most nights anyway. Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? I asked, my heart rate quickening. He looked up, his expression a mixture of hope and careful restraint. Only if you're ready. I know this house has special significance for you. It represents your independence, your fresh start. The last thing I want is to compromise that. I thought about how different this moment was from my past experiences. Michael wasn't assuming or demanding. He was asking, ready to accept whatever answer felt right to me. And he understood the symbolic importance of this space, this house I had reclaimed as solely mine after years of compromise. I think I'd like that, I said finally. But with some conditions. We share expenses, obviously. And I keep the art studio as my space. And we renovate the guest room into a proper office for you. Michael's face broke into a relieved smile. Those all sound reasonable. Any other terms? Just one, I said, stepping closer. This is a partnership. Equal voices, equal respect, equal dreams. I'm never going back to making myself smaller for someone else's comfort. I would never ask you to, he assured me, wrapping his arms around my waist. Your strength, your independence, those are the things I love most about you. It was the first time either of us had used the word love, though the feeling had been growing between us for months. It felt right in that moment, not a desperate declaration or manipulative tool, but a simple truth acknowledged when we were both ready to hear it. 2 months later, Michael moved in. The transition was remarkably smooth, perhaps because we had built our relationship on a foundation of mutual respect and clear communication. We each maintained our careers and individual interests while creating new rituals and routines together. Friday night became board game night. Sunday mornings were for coffee and reading on the porch swing. Small moments of connection that built a shared life without sacrificing our individual identities. Shortly after Michael moved in, I received a LinkedIn message that caught me by surprise. It was from TechVision, Mark's former employer, inviting me to apply for a newly created position, Education Outreach Director. The role would involve developing programs to introduce students to technology careers, with a special focus on engaging girls and children from underrepresented groups. It was a perfect blend of my teaching background and the entrepreneurial skills I'd developed with Spark Learning. I hesitated, knowing Mark might still have connections there despite having moved to a different firm. The last thing I wanted was workplace awkwardness or drama. But the opportunity was too perfect to dismiss without consideration. After discussing it with Michael, I responded expressing interest, but noting my concerns about potential conflicts given my personal history with a former employee. The HR director's response was illuminating. "We're aware of your connection to Mark Anderson, who no longer works with our company. In fact, it was during the exit interviews following his departure that your name came up. Several female employees mentioned your educational background and the work you're doing with Spark Learning. We've been following your progress and believe you would be an excellent fit for this role." Mark no longer worked there. The revelation wasn't entirely surprising. His professional reputation had suffered after his deception came to light. But the timing was interesting. Had he left? Voluntarily? Or had his personal ethics finally caught up with his career? I decided it didn't matter. What mattered was that this opportunity had presented itself, and I was qualified and excited about the potential impact. The interview process was rigorous but energizing. Each conversation confirmed that this role aligned perfectly with my skills and passion for educational equity. When the offer came through, with a salary nearly double my teaching income, I accepted without reservation. Spark Learning would continue as my personal project, with the part-time teachers taking on more responsibility during the school year, but this new position would allow me to influence educational opportunities on a much larger scale. My first day at TechVision brought an unexpected encounter. As I was being given a tour of the facilities, we passed a familiar face. The woman I had seen with Mark in some of the later Instagram posts from the period just after our divorce. She did a double take, clearly recognizing me, then approached with a tentative smile. "You must be Jennifer Parker, the new Education Outreach Director," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Melissa Chen, Marketing Coordinator. Welcome to TechVision." I shook her hand, noting the irony of the situation. "Thank you. I'm looking forward to working here." Melissa hesitated, then spoke quietly. "I feel like I should acknowledge the elephant in the room. I briefly dated Mark after everything. I want you to know it was very brief. And once I understood the full situation, I ended it immediately. I hope that won't make working together uncomfortable." Her directness was refreshing. "I appreciate your honesty," I replied. "That's all in the past now. I'm here to focus on creating opportunities for students, not to dwell on personal history." Relief washed over her face. "That's great to hear. Actually, I'd love to talk with you about some ideas I have for engaging high school girls in our coding workshops. My niece participated in one last year and had some really insightful feedback." And just like that, a potentially awkward situation transformed into a productive professional connection. Melissa became one of my strongest allies at TechVision, her marketing expertise complementing my educational background as we developed outreach programs together. 6 months into my new role, I was presenting our latest initiative at an educational technology conference when I spotted a familiar face in the audience. Mark sat in the back row, his expression unreadable as I outlined our plans for a summer coding camp targeting underserved communities. For a moment, our eyes met, and I felt a brief flutter of anxiety. Then I continued my presentation without missing a beat, confident in my expertise and the value of the work I was sharing. After the session, as attendees gathered around with questions, Mark approached cautiously. He looked different, thinner, with touches of gray at his temples that hadn't been there before. He waited until the crowd had dispersed before speaking. "That was an impressive presentation," he said, maintaining a respectful distance. "The program sounds incredible." "Thank you," I replied, keeping my tone professional. "Are you attending the full conference?" He nodded. "I'm representing Westside Solutions now. We're much smaller than TechVision, but doing interesting work." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I heard about your book and Spark Learning, and now this. You've accomplished so much in 2 years." There was no bitterness in his voice, only a wistful acknowledgement. I wondered briefly what he was thinking. Was he regretting his choices? Comparing his current life to what might have been? It didn't really matter. We had both moved forward, following paths that had diverged irreversibly that April morning when Sam sent me that fateful Instagram screenshot. "Life takes unexpected turns," I said simply. "We adapt." Mark nodded, understanding the understatement. "You've done more." "Then adapt, Jen. You've thrived." He hesitated, then added, "I'm glad. You deserve it." Before I could respond, Michael appeared at my side, having just finished his own session in another room. "Sorry I'm late," he said, then noticed Mark and extended his hand. "Michael Collins." "Mark Anderson," came the reply as they shook hands. "I was just complimenting Jennifer on her presentation. The program she's developing is remarkable." If Michael recognized the name, he gave no indication. "It really is," he agreed proudly. "Though I'm biased, of course." An awkward moment passed before Mark nodded politely. "Well, I should get to my next session." "Good seeing you, Jen. Nice to meet you, Michael." As he walked away, Michael turned to me with raised eyebrows. "That was my ex-husband," I confirmed. "The one who spent our savings taking his girlfriend to Cabo." Michael's eyes widened. "Ah, that explains the tension. You okay?" I considered the question, taking stock of my emotions. There was no anger, no hurt, not even resentment, just a calm acknowledgement of a chapter closed. "I'm fine," I assured him. "Better than fine, actually. It's strange, but seeing him just reinforced how completely that part of my life is behind me. There's no emotional charge left." Michael smiled, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. "That's what healing looks like," he said. "Not forgetting or pretending it didn't hurt, but reaching a point where it no longer has power over you." Later that evening, as Michael and I enjoyed dinner at the hotel restaurant, I reflected on the day's unexpected encounter. "You know, what's ironic?" I mused. "If Mark hadn't betrayed me, if he hadn't taken that trip to Cabo, I might still be in a marriage that was slowly diminishing me. I might never have started Spark Learning, or written my book, or taken this job at TechVision. His worst action toward me ultimately led to my best life." "The universe works in mysterious ways," Michael agreed. "Though I'd never suggest betrayal as a recommended path to personal growth." I laughed, appreciating his perspective. "Definitely not. But it does make me wonder how many people stay in situations that aren't serving them because making a change seems too difficult or frightening." "That's what makes your story so powerful," Michael said. "You didn't just react to what happened to you. You created something entirely new from it. You transformed betrayal into opportunity." His words stayed with me long after dinner, through our return home and into the following days. There was truth in what he said. I hadn't just survived Mark's betrayal. I had used it as a catalyst for transformation. While he was enjoying his luxury vacation with his mistress, I had been packing away more than just his physical belongings. I had been packing away limitations, compromises, and a version of myself that had grown too comfortable with being less than I could be. 2 weeks later, I received an email that brought this reflection full circle. A publisher was interested in having me write a book about educational approaches for children with learning differences, based on the success of Spark Learning and my work at TechVision. The acquiring editor had heard me speak at the conference and believed my perspectives would be valuable to teachers and parents navigating these challenges. As I read through the proposal, sitting in the art studio that had once been Mark's home office, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought me here. Not gratitude for the betrayal itself, that had been cruel and unnecessary, but for the strength I had found in its aftermath. I opened my laptop and began drafting an outline for the book, drawing on experiences from my classroom teaching, Spark Learning successes, and the developing programs at TechVision. As I worked, Cooper the therapy dog dozed at my feet, and through the open door, I could hear Michael preparing dinner in the kitchen, humming softly to himself. This was my life now, rich with purpose, partnership, and possibilities. Not, despite what had happened, but because of how I had responded to it. While Mark had been on his luxury vacation with his mistress, I had packed his bags and sold his car, but more importantly, I had unpacked my potential and sold myself on. The idea that I deserved better. Both actions had been necessary to create the life I now enjoyed. Life has a way of bringing everything full circle. Exactly 3 years after that fateful morning when I discovered Mark's betrayal, I found myself standing in the lobby of El Dorado Resort in Cabo San Lucas. The irony wasn't lost on me as I checked in, watching sunburned tourists drift between the infinity pool and swim-up bar. This was where it had all unraveled, where Olivia had posted those damning photos that Sam had forwarded to me, where Mark had spent our savings on luxury while I ate packed lunches and sold my belongings, to contribute to our future. But I wasn't here to exorcise demons or confront painful memories. I was here as a keynote speaker for an international education conference, invited to present my work with Spark Learning and TechVision's outreach programs. My second book, Different Not Less: Reimagining Education for Diverse Learners, had become an unexpected bestseller, embraced by teachers, parents, and education policymakers across the country. This conference was an opportunity to share these methods with an international audience of educators. Michael had come with me, turning the trip into a working vacation. As we were escorted to our ocean view suite, the same category of room, that had appeared in Olivia's Instagram posts, I couldn't help but smile at the symmetry. 3 years ago, this luxury had represented betrayal and excess. Today, it was a professional perk, earned through my own accomplishments. Everything? Okay, Michael asked, noticing my expression as the bellhop left us to unpack. More than okay, I assured him, walking to the balcony and looking out at the turquoise water stretching to the horizon. Just appreciating how different things can look from a new perspective. Over dinner that evening, I shared the full weight of the coincidence. With Michael, the last time someone I was involved with stayed in this resort, it ended my marriage, I explained, twirling pasta around my fork. There's something poetic about being here now, on my own terms, for my own achievements. Michael reached across the table, squeezing my hand. From heartbreak to headliner, it's a pretty impressive journey. The conference organizers had no idea about the connection when they booked this venue, I mused. Sometimes the universe has a sense of humor. Or maybe it's offering closure, Michael suggested. A chance to replace those negative associations with something positive. The next morning, as I prepared for my presentation, I found myself scrolling through old photos on my phone. I'd kept a few images from that period, Screenshots of Olivia's posts, visual reminders of the pain that had ultimately led to growth. Looking at them now, they seemed to belong to another lifetime. Another version of myself who had been so devastated by betrayal that she could barely function. What struck me most was how young I looked in the few photos from that time. Not in years, but in experience. There was an innocence in my eyes that had been replaced by something deeper, more grounded. Not hardness, but clarity. The woman who had discovered her husband's betrayal 3 years ago was a distant relative to the woman preparing to address an international audience today. My keynote speech was scheduled for 10 a.m. in the resort's grand ballroom. As attendees filed in, I scanned the crowd from behind the stage, a habit from my teaching days of assessing the energy in a room. The audience was diverse. Educators from across the globe, united by a commitment to serving students with learning differences. My nerves settled as I reminded myself that we shared a common purpose. The introduction was generous, highlighting the impact of Spark Learning, my books, and the TechVision initiatives I had developed. As I took the stage to enthusiastic applause, I felt a surge of gratitude for every step of the journey that had brought me here. Even the painful ones. 3 years ago, I began, departing slightly from my planned opening. I thought my life was falling apart. A personal betrayal had shattered my sense of security and left me questioning everything I thought I knew about myself and my future. I paused, letting the unexpected personal disclosure settle over the room. I share this not for sympathy, but because that moment of crisis became the catalyst for everything I'm about to present to you today. For the next hour, I outlined the innovative approaches we had developed at Spark Learning and expanded through TechVision's educational outreach, methods that recognized and celebrated different learning styles, that turned traditional weaknesses into strengths that empowered children who had been marginalized by conventional educational systems. I shared case studies, data, and personal anecdotes, weaving together a narrative of transformation, not just for the students we served, but for education itself. Often, I concluded, our greatest innovations emerge from our deepest challenges. The question isn't whether we will face difficulties, we all will, but how we choose to respond to them. Do we allow them to define and limit us? Or do we use them as springboards to create something new, something better, something that might never have existed without that initial disruption? The standing ovation that followed was overwhelming. As educators lined up to ask questions and share their own experiences, I spotted a familiar face near the back of the room, Melissa Chen, the TechVision marketing coordinator who had briefly dated Mark after our divorce. Her presence surprised me. I hadn't known she would be attending the conference. Later, as the crowd dispersed for lunch, Melissa approached the stage. "That was incredible," she said sincerely. "You've taken everything we're doing at TechVision to a whole new level with this international exposure." "Thank you," I replied, gathering my notes. "I didn't realize you were attending the conference." Melissa looked slightly uncomfortable. "It was a last-minute decision. The marketing team thought we should have representation, and..." She hesitated. "Well, I volunteered because I wanted to see Cabo. I've never been before." The irony of her statement wasn't lost on either of us. This was where Mark had brought Olivia, not Melissa. There was an awkward moment of shared understanding before Melissa spoke again. "I know this is strange," she admitted, "but I wanted to thank you." "Thank me?" I was genuinely confused. "For how you handled everything. You could have made things really difficult for me at TechVision when I joined your team, given my brief history with Mark. But you were professional and kind. You judged me on my work, not my poor taste in men." She smiled ruefully at her own joke. "We've all made questionable romantic choices," I said lightly. "Besides, you ended things with Mark once you understood the situation. That says something positive about your character." Melissa nodded. "Still, working with you has been educational." Watching how you've transformed your setbacks into success has influenced how I approach challenges in my own life." Her words touched me deeply. I had never considered that my response to betrayal might serve as a model for others facing their own difficulties. "Thank you for telling me that," I said genuinely. "It means a lot." The remainder of the conference passed in a blur of presentations, networking events, and beachside conversations with educators from around the world. Michael and I managed to carve out time for ourselves as well, enjoying sunset cruises and exploring local markets. We created new memories in this place that had once represented such pain, replacing old associations with fresh experiences. On our final evening, Michael suggested a private dinner on the beach. The resort had set up a table for two on the sand, surrounded by tiki torches and beneath a canopy of stars. As we finished our dessert, Michael reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box. "I had planned to wait until we got home," he explained, suddenly looking nervous. "But being here, seeing you reclaim this place and transform it into something positive, it feels right to do this now. To continue that process of turning difficult memories into beautiful new beginnings." My heart raced as he opened the box, revealing a simple but elegant ring. "Jennifer Parker, you are the most resilient, compassionate, and inspiring person I've ever known. Every day with you makes me want to be a better man, a better partner, a better human being. Would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" Tears filled my eyes as I looked at the ring, at Michael, at the beach where 3 years ago my husband had betrayed me with another woman. The symmetry was almost too perfect, a proposal of true partnership in the very place where false promises had been exposed. "Yes," I whispered, then more firmly. "Yes, absolutely yes." As Michael slipped the ring onto my finger, I felt no shadow of my past heartbreak, only gratitude for the journey that had brought me to this moment. We sealed our engagement with a kiss as waves gently lapped the shore, nature's applause, for this newest chapter in my ongoing story of transformation. When we returned to Portland, life accelerated rapidly. News of my international presentation sparked interest from schools and educational organizations across the country. Requests for workshops, consultations, and speaking engagements filled my inbox. Spark Learning, which had begun as a small summer program with just 5 students, now had a waiting list and 3 full-time employees. The children's book series had expanded to 4 titles, with a 5th in development. Amid this professional whirlwind, Michael and I began planning our wedding, a small, intimate gathering at the Japanese Garden in Portland, with only our closest friends and family in attendance. Unlike my first wedding, which had been shaped largely by Mark's preferences and social expectations, this celebration would reflect our shared values: simplicity, authenticity, and meaningful connection. One rainy Saturday afternoon, as I sorted through old papers in preparation for our eventual move to the house we were purchasing together, I came across a dusty folder labeled Future Plans, M&J. Inside were documents from my marriage to Mark, budgets for our savings goals, brochures for vacation properties we had considered, even a timeline for when we planned to start a family. Looking at these artifacts of a future that never materialized, I felt strangely detached, as if reviewing someone else's abandoned dreams. The last item in the folder was a personal bucket list I had created early in our marriage, things I hoped to accomplish in my lifetime. Many of the items had been crossed out or modified, adjustments I had made to accommodate Mark's vision for our life together. Write a children's book had been changed to Support M's career advancement. Start an educational consulting business had been reduced to Consider part-time tutoring after teaching. I had systematically diminished my dreams to make room for his, never questioning whether this was a necessary or healthy compromise. The realization wasn't bitter, just illuminating. Another piece of understanding about how I had participated in my own limitation during those years. On impulse, I created a new bucket list, refusing to censor or qualify my aspirations. This time, the items reflected my authentic desires. Expand Spark Learning to multiple locations. Develop a teacher training program based on our methods. Create an educational app for children with processing differences. Learn Italian. Visit the Galapagos Islands with Michael. When Michael came home later that afternoon, I showed him both lists, the old and the new. He studied them thoughtfully, then looked up with a mixture of sadness and admiration. "This is why I love you," he said simply. "You've learned to dream in bold strokes again." "The difference," I explained, "is that with Mark, I felt I needed permission to want things. With you, I feel encouraged to be my fullest self." Michael nodded, understanding perfectly. That's what real partnership should be. Not shrinking each other, but helping each other expand. As our wedding approached, I received an unexpected message through my publisher's website. It was from Olivia Reynolds, the woman whose Instagram posts had revealed Mark's betrayal 3 years earlier. "I hope this isn't inappropriate," she wrote, "but I wanted to congratulate you on your engagement. A mutual acquaintance mentioned it, and I just wanted to say how genuinely happy I am for you. Your books have made a significant difference for my niece, who struggles with traditional learning environments. I know this might seem strange coming from me, but I've followed your career with admiration. You turned pain into purpose in a way that's truly inspiring. Wishing you and your fiancé all the happiness in the world." I read the message twice, unsure how to feel about this connection from the past. There was no obligation to respond, no social requirement to engage with someone who had played such a painful role in my history. Yet her words seemed sincere, and the mention of her niece benefiting from my work touched me. After careful consideration, I sent a brief reply. "Thank you for your kind words. I'm glad to hear your niece has found my books helpful. Wishing you well in your own journey forward." It wasn't forgiveness exactly. That implied a debt I didn't feel was owed to me personally. Olivia had been as much a victim of Mark's deception as I had been, just in a different way. It was more an acknowledgement that we had both moved beyond that chapter, emerging as more evolved versions of ourselves. 2 weeks before our wedding, another blast from the past arrived, this one less welcome. Mark sent an email, his first direct communication in over a year. The subject line read, "A request." "Jennifer," it began, "I've heard about your upcoming wedding. Congratulations. Michael seems like a good man who appreciates you in ways I failed to. I'm writing because I'm finally selling my vinyl record collection. Before listing them publicly, I wanted to offer you first choice of any albums you might want to keep. It seems right somehow, given how carefully you preserved them during our divorce. No pressure, just thought I'd ask. Mark." The email stirred complex emotions. The records had been important to Mark, one of the few possessions I had made, a special effort to protect despite my anger. His offer to give me first choice before selling them felt like an olive branch, a small gesture of appreciation for that act of decency during an otherwise painful separation. I discussed it with Michael, who demonstrated his usual emotional intelligence. "It's entirely up to you," he said. "If there are records you enjoyed or that have positive associations for you, there's nothing wrong with accepting his offer. If it feels too complicated or brings up difficult feelings, that's also completely valid." After reflection, I replied to Mark, "Thank you for thinking of me. There was one album we often played on Sunday mornings, the Ella Fitzgerald and Louis Armstrong duets. If that's available, I'd be interested. Otherwise, I wish you well with the sale." Mark responded promptly, saying he would set aside the Ella and Louis album and arrange for it to be delivered. True to his word, a package arrived 3 days later containing not just the requested record, but a short note. "Thank you for teaching me what integrity looks like, even when it would have been easier to respond with justified anger. I'm trying. to carry that lesson forward. Wishing you and Michael every happiness. Mark. I placed the album on our record shelf without ceremony or second thoughts. It wasn't a sentimental keepsake from my marriage, but a beautiful musical collaboration that deserved to be enjoyed in my new life. The note I tucked into a drawer, not to revisit regularly, but to preserve as a milestone marker of how far we had all come from that painful time. Our wedding day dawned clear and bright, with cherry blossoms drifting like pink snow throughout the Japanese garden. Alex walked me down the path to where Michael waited beside a stone bridge arching over a koi pond. Mrs. Wilson occupied a place of honor in the front row, dabbing at her eyes with an embroidered handkerchief. Sam stood beside me as my maid of honor, beaming with approval and satisfaction at this happy culmination of a journey she had supported from its darkest beginning. The ceremony was brief but meaningful, with vows we had written ourselves that emphasized growth, partnership, and authentic connection. "I promise to see you," Michael vowed. "Not just who you are today, but who you are becoming. I promise to create space for your dreams to flourish alongside mine. I promise to stand both beside you and on my own 2 feet," I responded. "To build a partnership where we each remain whole individuals while creating something greater together." As we exchanged rings, I was struck by how different this felt from my first wedding. There was no desperation to please, no performance for others, no compromise of my essential self. Just 2 people choosing each other with clear eyes and open hearts, having learned through experience what truly matters in partnership. The reception was held in the garden's pavilion, with string lights twinkling among paper lanterns as dusk fell. During the toasts, Sam recounted how she had found me that morning 3 years ago, devastated by Mark's betrayal, but already showing signs of the strength that would ultimately define my response. "Some people collapse under betrayal," she observed, raising her glass. "Others become bitter and closed. But Jen did something remarkable. She used that painful moment as a catalyst to reclaim herself. Every step she's taken since then has been toward greater authenticity and purpose." Michael, you're not getting the woman Mark lost. You're getting the woman Jen found when she was finally free to discover herself. As applause filled the pavilion, I leaned against Michael's shoulder, overwhelmed with gratitude for the journey that had brought me here. Every step, even the painful ones, had been necessary to create this moment, this version of myself, this life I now cherished. Later, as we danced beneath the stars, Michael whispered in my ear, "Sam was right, you know. The woman you've become since I met you, she's even more amazing than the woman I fell in love with initially. You keep evolving, growing more fully, into yourself." "That's what healing looks like," I replied, echoing words he had once spoken to me. "Not forgetting the hurt, but transforming it into something valuable." Our honeymoon took us not to Cabo or any luxury beach resort, but to a small village in Italy where we spent mornings learning Italian from local shopkeepers, afternoons exploring ancient ruins, and evenings enjoying simple meals at family-owned trattorias. It was perfectly us, intellectual, authentic, focused on experiences rather than appearances. Upon our return to Portland, we moved into the craftsman bungalow we had purchased together in a neighborhood known for its diversity and strong sense of community. Unlike my previous home, which had been chosen largely for its investment potential and status value, this house was selected for its warmth, character, and proximity to a school where I volunteered regularly. The transition to married life was surprisingly seamless, perhaps because we had built such a solid foundation before making this commitment. We each maintained our careers and individual interests while creating new rituals and traditions together. Sunday mornings were reserved for coffee and jazz on the porch swing, sometimes including that Ella and Louie album, now associated more with our present than my past. 6 months after our wedding, TechVision offered me an unprecedented opportunity. Developing and leading a foundation focused on educational equity and innovation. The role would combine everything I was passionate about: creating learning opportunities for underserved communities, developing new teaching methodologies for diverse learners, and advocating for systemic changes in how we approach education. The salary was generous, the creative freedom extensive, and the potential impact enormous. The only catch? We would need to relocate to Seattle, where the foundation would be headquartered. Michael and I spent several weekends discussing the opportunity, weighing the professional benefits against the personal adjustments. His psychology practice could transfer relatively easily, as he had been gradually shifting toward telehealth consultations anyway. Spark Learning had grown beyond my direct daily management, with capable staff who could continue its mission. With my oversight, "I think we should do it," Michael said finally, as we hiked through Forest Park, discussing the move for the third consecutive weekend. "This foundation is exactly what you've been working toward, a platform to implement your ideas on a much larger scale. Seattle isn't that far, and we can keep the Portland house as a weekend place until we're sure about the move." "You'd really be willing to relocate for my career?" I asked, still surprised by this level of support despite our solid partnership. Michael stopped on the trail, turning to face me. "Why wouldn't I? It's an incredible opportunity for you, which makes it a positive for us. That's how partnership works, isn't it? We support each other's growth, even when it requires adaptation." His response highlighted yet again the difference between my past and present relationships. Mark had expected me to accommodate his career without question, while resisting any changes that would advance mine. Michael saw my professional growth as intrinsically valuable, not as competition or inconvenience. We moved to Seattle that spring, finding a charming apartment overlooking Puget Sound. The TechVision Educational Equity Foundation launched with significant funding and ambitious goals. As founding director, I assembled a team of innovative educators, researchers, and technologists committed to transforming how we serve diverse learners. Our first initiative, a summer program for students from low-income communities, garnered national attention and became a model for similar efforts across the country. One evening, about a year after our move to Seattle, I received a notification about a local news segment featuring a teacher bringing innovative methods to struggling students. Curious about potential collaboration opportunities, I clicked the link. To my surprise, the segment featured Mark. He had apparently left the corporate world entirely and returned to school for a teaching credential. Now he was working in a high-needs middle school, implementing methods that looked remarkably similar to those I had developed at Spark Learning and expanded through the foundation. I was inspired by someone who showed me that education isn't just about transferring information, he told the interviewer. It's about recognizing each student's unique way of processing and connecting with the world. When we adapt our teaching to how students naturally learn, rather than forcing them to adapt to our preferred teaching style, remarkable things happen. I watched the segment twice, fascinated by this unexpected evolution in Mark's life. The reporter noted that he had left a lucrative marketing career to pursue teaching, a significant financial step down, but one he described as the most rewarding change I've ever made. Michael found me still staring at my laptop when he returned from walking Cooper. "Everything okay?" he asked, noticing my expression. "Mark has become a teacher," I explained, replaying the segment for him. "And he's using approaches that are basically what we developed at Spark Learning." Michael watched thoughtfully. "He seems sincere," he observed. "Do you mind that he's adopted your methods?" I considered the question carefully. Did I mind that the man who had once dismissed my teaching career as just a job was now implementing my educational philosophy? That he was receiving public recognition for approaches I had pioneered? That he had found purpose in a field I had always valued, while he had not? Actually, no, I realized. The whole point of our work is to help more students succeed. If Mark is effectively implementing these methods and reaching kids who need them, that's a positive outcome. The ideas were never meant to be proprietary. They're meant to spread. Michael smiled, squeezing my shoulder. That's what makes you extraordinary, he said simply. Your priority has always been impact over ego. The next day, I sent Mark a brief email. Saw your feature on Channel 5. The students' engagement was impressive. If your school would be interested in participating in the Foundation's teacher training program, have your principal contact me directly. We have grants available for schools serving high-needs populations. His reply came within hours. Thank you for reaching out. That's incredibly generous. Our principal will be contacting your office tomorrow. For what it's worth, I credit you entirely for this path I'm on now. Watching how deeply you cared about your students, even when I failed to appreciate it, that planted a seed that took a long time to grow. I'm grateful every day for the purpose I've found, even if I had to lose everything else to discover it. The exchange wasn't about reconciliation or friendship. Too much had happened for that. But it was about something perhaps more meaningful. The recognition that sometimes our greatest influence occurs in ways we never anticipated, and that growth can emerge from even the most painful circumstances. 2 years later, as Michael and I welcomed our adopted daughter Maya into our family, I reflected on the long, unexpected journey that had brought us to this point. Maya was 7, with bright eyes, a quick mind, and learning differences that had made traditional classrooms challenging for her. We had met her through a foundation program and felt an immediate connection. After months of visits, paperwork, and preparation, she was finally coming home with us permanently. As we showed Maya her room, decorated with characters from my children's books and equipped with the tools and technologies I knew would support her learning style, I thought about how perfectly life had prepared me for this moment. My professional expertise, personal growth, and hard-won wisdom about what truly constitutes partnership and family, all would serve this child who needed exactly what I had to offer. That evening, after Maya had fallen asleep surrounded by new stuffed animals and books, Michael and I sat on our balcony overlooking the Sound, sharing a quiet moment of reflection. It's amazing how life circles back, I mused. If Mark hadn't taken that trip to Cabo, if I hadn't packed his bags and sold his car in response, if I hadn't been forced to rebuild my life on my own terms, would I have ever developed Spark Learning? Written the books? Created the foundation? Would we have ever met Maya? The butterfly effect of betrayal, Michael observed. One terrible action setting in motion, a sequence that ultimately led to something beautiful. I used to think that Mark's actions broke my life apart. I continued. Now I realize they merely cleared the ground for something better to grow. Not immediately. There was real pain and grief first. But eventually, that clearing made space for everything I truly wanted, but had compromised away. As the sun set over the water, painting the sky in spectacular oranges and pinks, I thought about that moment 3 years ago when I had discovered Mark's betrayal. The mug slipping from my fingers, shattering on the floor. The physical pain in my chest as I scrolled through Olivia's Instagram posts. The moment when cold clarity replaced hurt, and I decided to act rather than merely react. In that darkest moment, I couldn't have imagined the life I now enjoyed. A true partnership with a man who celebrated my success rather than feeling threatened by it. Meaningful work that impacted thousands of children. A daughter whose unique mind would be nurtured rather than merely accommodated. And perhaps most importantly, a relationship with myself built on respect and authenticity rather than compromise and diminishment. While my husband had been on a luxury vacation with his mistress, I had packed his bags and sold his car. A decisive action that had felt bold and empowering in the moment. But the real courage had come in the days, weeks, and years that followed, as I systematically unpacked my own potential and sold myself on the radical idea that I deserved to live authentically. That process, painful, messy, and ultimately transformative, had created not just a new life, but a new self. not a self without scars or memories, but one who had incorporated those experiences into a more compassionate, determined, and purposeful way of being. As Maya's tiny snores drifted through the baby monitor, Michael squeezed my hand. "Happy?" he asked simply. I nodded, feeling the fullness of the moment, the pain of the past transformed but not forgotten, the joy of the present embraced completely, the promise of the future unfolding before us. "Completely," I answered. And it was true, not because life was perfect, or because hardship had been permanently banished, but because I had learned the most valuable lesson of all. Our greatest power lies not in avoiding betrayal or pain, but in how we choose to respond to it. In that choice, to create rather than merely survive, lies the possibility of a life more meaningful and authentic than we might otherwise have known. Life has a way of surprising you, not just in its challenges, but in how those challenges reshape your future in unexpected ways. 5 years have passed since Maya joined our family. 12 years since that fateful morning when I discovered Mark's betrayal. Our daughter is now 12, a brilliant 7th grader who sees the world through a unique lens that allows her to solve problems in ways that continually amaze her teachers. The TechVision Educational Equity Foundation has expanded to 15 cities across the country, implementing programs that have demonstrably improved outcomes for students with learning differences. My 4th book, The Authentic Classroom, has become standard reading in teacher education programs. Michael's practice, specializing in neurodiversity, has a 6-month waiting list. We've settled permanently in Seattle, though we still visit Portland regularly to maintain connections with Sam, Alex, and Mrs. Wilson, who at 79 remains sharp as ever and still bakes the best scones in Oregon. Last month, I received an unexpected email from a producer at a major streaming service. They wanted to create a documentary series about educational innovation, featuring the Foundation's work as a central case study. The timing coincided with Maya's school spring break, so we agreed to initial filming at our Seattle headquarters. On the second day of shooting, as the crew was capturing B-roll of our teacher training program, the producer approached me during a break. "There's something I've been wondering," she said casually. "The origin story of Spark Learning and your career pivot. It seems like there was a specific catalyst. Would you be comfortable sharing more about that for the documentary? Personal journeys often resonate deeply with viewers." I hesitated, considering how much of my private history I wanted to make public. While close colleagues knew the broad strokes of my transition from classroom teacher to educational innovator, I had never publicly discussed the betrayal that had triggered that transformation. That evening, I discussed the request with Michael and Maya over dinner. "It's entirely your decision," Michael said supportively. "But your story might help others facing similar crossroads." Maya, practical and direct as always, had a 12-year-old's perspective. "Mom, you always tell me that our challenges help make us who we are. Maybe telling your story would help someone else who's sad like you were." Her simple wisdom decided it. The next day, I sat for an extended interview, sharing the complete narrative, discovering Mark's betrayal, selling the BMW, packing his belongings, and most importantly, the subsequent journey of rebuilding my life on authentic terms. "What would you say to someone facing a similar betrayal?" the interviewer asked as we concluded. "I'd tell them that how someone treats you reveals their character, not your worth," I replied after careful consideration. "And that sometimes what feels like an ending is actually the first page of a much better story, if you're brave enough to write it yourself." The documentary aired 6 months later to critical acclaim. While I had been prepared for professional recognition, I was unprepared for the flood of personal messages that followed. Thousands of emails, letters, and social media comments from people who had found hope and direction in my experience. One message particularly stood out. It came through the Foundation's contact form with the subject line, "Thank you from an unexpected source." The sender was Olivia Reynolds. "I debated whether to write this," her message began. But after watching the documentary, I felt compelled to reach out. I've spent years ashamed of my role in your story, though I didn't know you existed when Mark and I began our relationship. When I discovered he was married, I ended things immediately, but the damage was done. She continued, "What I never told anyone was that watching how you handled that betrayal with dignity, purpose, and ultimately triumph inspired me to make significant changes in my own life. Today, I run a small nonprofit helping women rebuild after relationship trauma. Your story has been a North Star for our work, though until the documentary, none of our clients knew the connection." The message concluded with an unexpected request. "We're hosting a conference on resilience next spring. Would you consider being our keynote speaker? Your journey from betrayal to purpose embodies everything we're trying to teach." After discussing it with Michael, I accepted the invitation. The circle was completing itself in ways I could never have imagined when I sat shattered at my kitchen table 12 years ago. The conference was held in Portland, bringing me back to where everything had begun. As I took the stage and looked out at the audience of women in various stages of rebuilding their lives, I felt a profound sense of purpose. Olivia sat in the front row, now a respected advocate in her own right. 12 years ago, I began, I thought my life was ending when I discovered my husband's betrayal. I packed his bags, sold his car, and prepared for what I believed would be a diminished future. What I didn't understand then was that I wasn't losing my life. I was finding it. As I shared my journey from that broken morning to the fulfilling present, I watched understanding dawn in eyes that had known similar pain. These women weren't looking for revenge stories. They were seeking roadmaps to renewal. In sharing how betrayal had become the unlikely foundation for my most authentic life, I offered not just sympathy, but a practical template for transformation. The greatest revenge, I concluded, isn't getting even. It's living well. Not from spite, but from the profound understanding that you deserve a life built on truth, purpose, and genuine connection. That's not just surviving betrayal, that's transcending it. That evening, as Michael, Maya, and I walked along the Portland waterfront where my journey of rebuilding had begun, I felt a sense of completion. The pain that had once defined me had been transformed into purpose, not just for myself, but for others traveling similar paths. Some endings are actually beginnings in disguise. And sometimes, the luxury vacation that breaks your heart creates space for the authentic life your soul has been waiting for. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them. Out!